We've discussed several times on this project the glut of fighting games in the early days of the console, and how many different styles of fighting games were present, sporting different graphical presentations, fighting styles, and breadth of special moves. Two of the best were released by Capcom, Marvel vs. Capcom and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. But those games were both built out of rich, two-dimensional sprites. Capcom had teams working on 3D material as well. Their first in-house developed polygonal fighting game was 1996's Star Gladiator, subtitled Episode 1: Final Crusade. As opposed to the 6-button high-low control systems of their bread and butter, the Street Fighter series, Star Gladiator was structured more like the 4-button layout of Soul Edge, which had been released in Japan but hadn't made it stateside by the time Star Gladiator hit American consoles. Like Soul Edge, Star Gladiator was heavily focused on weapons combat, and had 2 strike buttons, plus a kick and a guard. The game also has special moves that come in a variety of flavors: plasma strikes, plasma combos, plasma reverses, plasma reflections, plasma revenges, all sorts of different plasma strategies. You might be saying, what's with all the plasma? And, well, that is a long story. Soul Edge certainly had a roster of colorful characters, but its narrative was pretty straightforward. It's about a series of warriors searching for the ultimate sword for various reasons. Star Gladiator, on the other hand, was originally intended to be a Star Wars fighting game. And somehow when that fell through, the writers really engaged their lore creation brains, and really made it complicated. This game is set in the year 2348, when humanity has traveled the stars, making peaceful contact with many alien civilizations. But Earth begins developing a weapon to protect itself from some hostile planets. A Nobel Prize-winning physicist named Dr. Edward BILSTEIN uncovered a technique for capturing the energy of the human mind, which he calls plasma power. This brings him fame and fortune until it's revealed he experimented on human beings, which gets him arrested and exiled from Earth to a satellite orbiting another planet. 4 years later, BILSTEIN has escaped and put his consciousness into an enormous cyborg body, and he and a group of rebels called the Fourth Empire have attacked an Earth army base. So Earth searches for people who can utilize plasma power to fight the Fourth Empire. The protagonist of this game is Hayato Kanzaki, a bounty hunter who fights for the kids at the orphanage he grew up in. Like most universe-saving heroes, he is the least interesting character here. He has 3 close friends: June, a British-Chinese rhythmic gymnast, who is fighting to avenge the death of her parents, a detail we will get into in just a second. Hilariously, once BILSTEIN is, spoilers, defeated, June feels she has nothing else to live for and tries to kill herself, until Hayato talks her out of it. We also have Saturn, who is a green-skinned conehead alien who comes from a planet in the Andromeda Galaxy, which the game specifies is not the Andromeda Galaxy in Earth's solar system, which, okay. He was a street performer on his home planet. He fights with plasma yo-yos. He was on Earth to research, live theater and learned about the threat and joined the fight. There's also Gamoth, who's a big monkey alien from a forest planet that had all their forests destroyed by an Earth microbe virus. Among the other fighters, we have a matador named Franco, whose family was kidnapped by BILSTEIN thanks to information gleaned from a rival matador. Also, BILSTEIN put a bomb in his chest, Jigsaw style. We also have a blue bird alien named Zelkin, a magician named Gore, who the game just defines as an Indonesian, and Rimgal, who is actually, surprise, June's father. Except he's not dead, he's just been turned into a velociraptor. Unlike his daughter, he actually does kill himself at the end of this game, which, welp. This results in Rimgal being the only character that does not return for the sequel, which you would expect to be called Star Gladiator Episode 2, but is instead called Plasma Sword, Nightmare of BILSTEIN, which sees the titular villain's consciousness return in a different cybernetic body, and the appearance of a ghost that looks like BILSTEIN's previous cybernetic body. So Hayato and the gang have made even more new friends, including a Japanese war veteran, an American, quote, aspiring superhero with a bird motif, and a different rhythmic gymnast, who it turns out is time-traveling from the future. There's also an evil version of Hayato, a space ninja that looks like a tiger, and on and on. I go into such detail here, both because all of this stuff is wacky as hell, but also because there's just so little to talk about when it comes to the actual gameplay here. They've changed plasma combos to special moves called plasma strikes, which you can use by storing energy in your plasma gauge, which makes it similar to the typical Capcom structure seen in games like Street Fighter or Darkstalkers. You can also get trapped in a plasma field, which, sure. The critical response to Plasma Sword was, just as it was for Star Gladiator, very mixed, and mostly polite at best, with even the highest praise getting tempered by qualifications, calling it inessential and not top tier, and saying it won't win points for originality, and saying it's mostly useful as another entry to round out the fighting game portfolio for Capcom and the Dreamcast console, as opposed to standing on its own in any sort of meaningful way. Just as Star Gladiator got overshadowed on original release by Soul Edge in the weapons-based 3D polygonal fighting game arena, Plasma Sword found itself dropping a few months in the wake of Soul Edge's sequel, a little game called SOULCALIBUR. A game that did absolutely everything Plasma Sword did, but leagues better. Plasma Sword is not bad, and if it was the only option you had, you'd make do. It's quirky, it looks nice, and it's relatively fluid, especially with the more finesse-based characters. But compared to SOULCALIBUR, everything comes up lacking. So its characters having insanely convoluted backstories for no reason and to no real benefit in gameplay really sticks out instead. Reminiscent of the worst fighting game on my list, Psychic Force 2012. There's nothing here that you can't get from SOULCALIBUR, and I suspect that's why there isn't a third game called a completely different thing. Jeff Lundgren at NextGen said in his March 2000 review, quote, "If you're working your way down the list of Dreamcast brawlers, this is the one to buy next to last, just ahead of Mortal Kombat Gold. This is definitely better than Mortal Kombat Gold." But he's right in that there really isn't much reason to seek out or come back for Plasma Sword. Next time, I've built a racer. It's the fastest ever. There's a big race tomorrow on Bunta Eve. You could enter my pod. It's all but finished.